Rise of the Bondless Queen Part 1. Chapter 1, A Throne with No Oath. The throne room had never been this silent. Not during war. Not during coronation. Not even when the moonstone shattered. Elira stood at the center, flame-kissed and crowned in nothing but the light of her own will. Her hair hung wild over her shoulders, the crescent scars on her chest still glowing faintly with the residue of a bond she'd broken by choice. And in front of her, the throne waited. Stone carved by gods. Etched with runes only time could read. Empty. Not because she wasn't ready to take it, but because she refused to kneel for it. Kale stood beside her, silent and watchful. He looked older now, worn by battle, by love, by the absence of the tether that had once tied their hearts in unison. His wolf was quiet again, but his eyes flicked to the throne like it might leap from the dais and crown someone else in her place. Behind them, the court of elders whispered. She hasn't sworn the oath. She refuses to bond. She can't rule without the moon's favor. She's a risk. A threat. A symbol. A mistake. Elira's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade across glass. I will not take the throne as their Luna. Gasps echoed. One elder rose to protest, but she held up a hand, and the room obeyed her silence. I broke the bond. I ended the curse. The throne did not choose me, I chose to survive it. I won't swear loyalty to a power that tried to erase me. She stepped forward. And then passed the throne. She didn't sit. Instead, she turned to face the court, the light of the full moon casting silver lines across her skin like war paint. If you want a bonded queen, find another. If you want a puppet, sew your own strings. But if you want a ruler who can stand without a tether, then watch. And remember this moment. Because I am not the moon's chosen. Her voice softened, dangerous. I am what comes after the moon fails. Kale felt it before she did. The energy around her no longer hummed with wolf song or ancestral magic. It pulsed with something older. Something that had no name. The wolves bowed their heads out of instinct. The elders did not. And that would be their first mistake. Later, alone in the chambers carved into the palace's eastern tower, Kale stood at the edge of the balcony. Elira sat in the shadows, watching the stars, crownless and glowing. You turned down the throne, he said. No, she replied. I gave it a reason to want me back. Far below, in the torchlit halls of the temple vault, a sealed scroll pulsed once in blood-red light. A single rune ignited on its surface. The Bondless Queen has risen. Chapter 2, The Wolves Who Remain. The moon throne sat empty for the third day. And that was all it took for the court to begin turning on itself. Elira hadn't left the eastern tower. She gave no orders. Made no declarations. She didn't need to. Her silence made them uneasy. In the throne hall, the elders argued with sharpened tongues and veiled threats. Without a bond, she holds no divine authority. The wolves follow instinct. She severed that instinct. Then perhaps we should let them choose another alpha to bond to. Kale walked among them, saying nothing. Watching. Listening. He recognized the smell of a palace on the edge of fracture. And the moment it would collapse would be the second Elira didn't strike first. Tezsan slammed her fists down on the war table. If one more old wolf questions her right to rule, I'll rip their tongue out and gift wrap it. Merrick leaned against the wall, arms folded. We don't need everyone to believe. We just need the right wolves to fear her more than they love tradition. Naira said nothing. She sat in the corner with her eyes closed, weaving dreams into the smoke from her tea. Her whisper was barely audible. The dreams are changing. The wolves who leave us don't remember her. Like something's peeling her out of the pack's memory. Tez-san turned sharply. What do you mean, don't remember her? Naira opened her eyes, black as storm glass. They remember Aluna. But not her name. By sunset, the Riverclaw pack had formally withdrawn allegiance. They left behind empty chambers, desecrated banners, and a single carved message on their doorway. No bond. No wolf. Elira read it in silence. Didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Just turned away, and ordered their chambers burned. That night, Kale found her not in her rooms, but at the far edge of the temple ruins, staring down into the old moon well. The stars reflected off her skin like armor. You're losing them, he said. She didn't look at him. They were never mine. That's not how wolves think, he replied. A leader doesn't ask for the pack. The pack forms around what it fears, or loves. And what if it forgets? Kale's jaw clenched. Then we burn the ones doing the forgetting. As he turned to leave, Elira lifted her hand. A strange pulse rippled through the air. Not the bond. Not wolf. Something else. Kale froze. What was that? Elira looked down at her palm. The crescent marks were gone. In their place, a spiral of broken symbols, glowing faintly silver blue. I think, she whispered, this is the magic that comes after the bond. At midnight, Elira climbed to the old Hullstone Tower. No crown. No guards. She shifted, partially, her form rimmed in silver fire, and raised her head to the stars. Her howl cut through the clouds like thunder in glass. Some wolves bowed. Some bled. Some ran. But the ones who stayed, howled back. And across the distant sea, where the forgotten clans had long remained silent, a second howl answered. Chapter 3, The Prophecy of the Ninth Moon. The howl had summoned more than wolves. It summoned memory. It arrived before dawn. Unmarked. Wrapped in midnight black silk and sealed with wax the color of bone. No messenger. No scent. Just the scroll. Left at Elira's door. Merrick found it first and nearly burned it on instinct. Naira snatched it before the flame took hold. Don't, she whispered, this isn't a threat. It's a warning. Elira unsealed it. Inside, a language no one had spoken in centuries. But she knew it. Not because she had studied it. Because the bondless magic whispered the translation into her blood. When the ninth moon rises, the bonds shall burn. And the wolves shall forget the name of their queen. One howl will shatter the tether. One mark will bleed the sky. And one queen, not chosen, not born, shall crown herself in the ashes of gods. Beneath the text was a sigil. An inverted crescent surrounded by 9 stars. And in the center, a spiral. The same symbol now burned into Elira's palm. The scroll made it to the council in under an hour. They called an emergency session. Kale stormed in just as the oldest elder, Ralvarin, blind since the First Great War, slammed his cane on the table. This is what comes of unmaking fate. She's triggered the ninth moon. Kale growled. You speak like it's real. It's more than real, Drenna hissed. It's been waiting. The ninth moon was never a prophecy. It's a ritual. One only the Bondless Queen could complete. And what does it complete? Kale asked. Ralvarin answered. The Age of Wolves. She arrived unannounced. Uncrowned. Barefoot. Spiral mark glowing under her skin. You're afraid, she said quietly. That I'll burn what you built. Drenna stood. You already have. Elira stepped closer. If the ninth moon is coming, it's not because I broke the bond. She raised her palm. It's because you lied about what the bond was. The runes in the chamber pulsed. One cracked. A silent warning from the palace itself. The ninth moon wasn't a myth. It was scheduled. And now the clock had started. That night, Kale wandered the temple vaults, alone, drawn by a whisper in his blood. He found it in the sealed vault beneath the moonstone chamber. A mural. Faded. Covered in moss and time. But as he wiped the surface clean, the image struck him with a clarity that stole his breath. 9 moons. 1 queen. A spiral between them. And wolves, dead at her feet. He remembered the name. Not from study. From his past life. Valesai, he whispered. And from the shadows, something replied. She rose on the 8th moon. You crowned the 9th. Elira stood atop the tower. The full moon hung bloated and quiet. But behind it, another shape formed. Thinner. Darker. Waiting. The 9th moon. And across the distant plains, wolves began forgetting her name. Not out of spite. Out of design. The prophecy wasn't metaphor. It was activation. And the countdown had begun. Chapter 4, The Silver-Fanged Heir. The scent reached the gates before he did. Not wolf. Not witch. Something older. Like snow. Steel. And moonlight soaked in poison. The guard who breathed it first passed out before he could sound the horn. By the time the palace doors opened, wolves were already lining the inner halls in silence, drawn by instinct, by magic, by danger. Kale stood at the top of the grand stairwell, flanked by his most loyal bloodguard. And even he flinched when the rider arrived. He rode a black wolf, a creature taller than a horse, with eyes like ice and scars along its ribs. His cloak trailed silver thread, and a half-helm of ivory fangs crowned his brow. He dismounted slowly, smoothly, like he didn't care whether anyone in the room breathed or burned. My name is Corian of the Howling Coast. I've come for your queen. She didn't wait for ceremony. Elira entered the hall barefoot, her hair braided in silver cords, the spiral on her hand glowing with soft defiance. She didn't descend the stairs. She stood above him. Looked down. I don't have a crown. Or a bond. What exactly are you here for? Corian grinned. His teeth flashed silver. Literally. Not caps. Not glamour. Fangs forged of a bloodline older than the Moon Palace itself. Then I suppose I've arrived in time to give you both. Kale stepped between them. The Howling Coast fell centuries ago. Corian didn't blink. We rose while you slept, Alpha. And while you broke your bond, I preserved mine. He turned to Elira again. My ancestors were the first to refuse the Moonstone's judgment. We were cast out. Marked as heretics. But we kept the true rights of the Luna Queen. Elira tilted her head. You mean you kept the version of the story where the queen dies screaming to feed the throne? Corian's grin widened. And now you're rewriting it. I'd like to help. Later, in the war garden, he made his offer under the light of the false moon. No elders. No guards. No Kale. Just the wind, the bloodgrass, and Elira's silence. You broke the bond, he said, and they call you dangerous. I never had one, and they call me cursed. She smirked. Sounds like we're both exactly what the throne fears. He stepped closer. I could lend you an army. 10,000 embonded wolves from the outer clans. Fighters. Sorcerers. Moon-marked twins. All loyal to me. And the price? She asked. He brushed a braid from her face. When you finish tearing down the old world, let me help build the new one. As your mate. Not by fate, but by fire. He found them at the edge of the cliffs, standing too close, too quiet. Kale's wolf snapped before his voice did. He didn't shift, but the air around him rippled with fury. Elira, he growled, you don't even know what he is. She turned calmly. I know what he isn't. He isn't afraid of me. Corian smiled lazily. Jealousy doesn't suit immortals, old king. Kale stepped forward, eyes darkening. And betrayal doesn't suit guests. In the highest tower of the palace, a crow with silver feathers landed on the windowsill and spoke in an old tongue. It croaked once. Then its voice shifted into that of a woman. The heir has arrived. The queen is listening. And the ninth moon is pleased. Far below, in the chamber of mirrors, Elira's reflection moved without her. And whispered. One mate will burn. One mate will rule. But both will break. Chapter 5, Fire in the Moon Garden. The Moon Garden had always been a sanctuary. Its flowers bloomed only under moonlight. Its marble pathways pulsed with soft silver runes. It was where old Lunas whispered their prayers and alpha heirs kissed their fated mates. Tonight, it was a war zone. The Crescent Court had gathered for diplomacy, at Kale's command. An attempt to show unity between bonded, unbonded, and the newly risen. Kale stood at Elira's side, posture taut. Corian hovered at her other shoulder, too calm, too close. Tezsan and Merrick flanked the outer edges, weapons hidden in plain sight. The elders watched like snakes beneath silk. Elira wore no crown. Only her spiral-marked hand, gloved in silver-threaded lace to keep the pulse from showing. The first toast had barely been raised. When the air shifted. Too still. Too quiet. And then. Explosion. A shockwave burst from the lower gardens, blades of heat and magic laced with wolf's bane and runed silver. The explosion shattered 3 trees and collapsed part of the glass observatory. Wolves shifted mid-scream. Blood sprayed the moonflowers. Kale moved instantly, shielding Elira with his body, even as flames licked up his arm. Corian snarled, his eyes turning metallic, his pupils slitted like a serpent's. They knew we'd all be here, he hissed. Who? Elira growled. But he didn't answer. Because something was crawling from the fire. Wolves. But wrong. Their fur was dull, their eyes blank. Their bodies moved like they weren't their own. Kale snarled. These aren't rogue pack. They're bondless. Like me. Elira spat. No. Worse. Corian drew a blade forged from frost steel. They were born that way. Raised in silence. Bred to obey only command spells. Whose command? She asked. From across the garden, a voice answered. Old. Female. Cruel. Mine. A figure stepped from the smoke. Veiled in shadow. Her cloak shimmered like black water, stitched with spiral sigils Elira had only seen once, on the altar beneath the throne. The crowd fell still. Some wolves dropped to one knee, against their will. Forced by spell. Elira stayed standing. You sent them to kill me, she called out. The figure tilted her head. No, Queen. I sent them to wake you up. And the assassins charged. Elira raised her hand. And this time, she didn't need a spell. Didn't need Kale. Didn't even need fear. The spiral in her palm ignited. And everything stopped. The assassins froze midair, caught in a glowing field of silver-blue light. They twitched once, then shattered. Not exploded. shattered. Like glass wolves breaking under their own magic. The garden fell into stunned silence. Elira stood breathing hard, her palms still glowing, her eyes glowing brighter than the flames. She hadn't spoken a word. She just unmade them. He stepped toward her, slowly. "Elira," he said, voice low, "what was that?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I didn't cast it. It just answered." "What?" "The magic. It answered me like a wolf would." She turned to him, eyes wild. "I think I'm not just bondless anymore. I think I'm becoming something else." After the fires were contained, and the elders retreated to their chambers in fear, Elira found Corian waiting in the broken observatory. He stood over the shattered moon mirror, where the blood had not yet dried. "You knew they were coming," she said. He didn't deny it. "I knew someone would test you. I didn't know she'd come herself." "Who is she?" Corian ran a finger across a spiral sigil burned into the stone. "Her name was once spoken only in the dark. They called her the First Breaker. And she believes you're her rebirth." Elira sat in her chamber that night, alone. The spiral on her palm pulsed again, hot, alive, dangerous. She raised her hand to the mirror. And her reflection didn't move. It smiled. And whispered in her voice. "I told you. You didn't break the bond. You replaced it." Chapter 6, The Trial of the 9 Moons. The summons arrived by blade. Not paper. Not magic. An obsidian dagger, ancient, rune-carved, dripping with frozen blood, was delivered to Elira's war table. And carved into its hilt. Trial claimed. Judgment demanded. Witness the 9. Tez-san stared at the blade, her knuckles white. This trial was banned centuries ago. It was used to break rogue Lunas, before they even bonded. Naira ran her hands over the runes, voice low. "It's a test of power. A trial of memory. Of control. Of submission. It wasn't meant for a queen. It was meant to crush a threat before she became one." Elira lifted the dagger. The moment her fingers closed around it, her spiral mark flared bright and searing. And 9 sigils appeared on the war room floor. Glowing. Moving. Breathing. She didn't flinch. "Good," she whispered. "Let them try to break me. Let them see what I become." The court of elders convened in the mirror vault, an underground amphitheater lit only by moonlight and spell flame. Kale stood beside Elira, fury simmering beneath his calm. "You don't have to do this," he muttered. "I do," she replied. "No queen has ever been put through this. Not even Silen. Not even Lyanna. I'm not them," she said. "And that's why they fear me." Corian watched from the upper balcony, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Tez-san and Merrick waited outside the ring, weapons ready, just in case the trial wasn't about rules, but execution. When the trial began, the lights vanished. 9 glowing circles formed around Elira, each carved from moonlight and memory. A voice echoed from all directions. "To rule without bond is to rule without soul. To command without tether is to challenge fate itself. Step into the 9 moons, and be remembered. Or be erased." A scene unfolded in light, Elira's first encounter with Kale in the dream path. She felt it, love, awe, fire. The trial tried to hold her in that illusion. Trap her there. She walked through it. That wasn't the beginning. That was the lie. The circle shattered. She saw herself in her chambers again. The assassin. The blood. The first time the bond tried to kill her. This time, the assassin spoke. "You should have died. The bond was meant to end you." She walked toward him, blade in hand. Then the bond should have tried harder. The circle broke. She stood before the moon throne, wrapped in silver chains, wolves howling for her name to be stripped. Kale knelt beside her, chained as well. The voice of the elders echoed. You are not Luna. You are not mate. You are nothing. She tore off the chains. And the throne burned with her mark. I was never yours. I was always mine. The circle shattered in flame. The last moon was not memory. It was choice. A single figure stepped from the light. Valesai. But not chained. Not monstrous. Beautiful. Calm. You broke the bond, she said. Now break the throne. Let the wolves destroy themselves. Or rebuild them in your image. Valesai held out her hand. Behind her, the moon palace in ruins. Elira looked at it. Then at her own palm. Her spiral mark pulsed, and for a moment, it bled. She didn't take the hand. She didn't destroy the vision. She turned her back. I don't want to repeat history, she whispered. I want to end the pattern. The circle shattered. And the lights returned. The elders stared in stunned silence. Ralvarin rose slowly. She walked through the 9 and kept her name. Let it be known. Elira is bondless by right. And Luna by will. Back in her chamber, Elira stared at her spiral mark. It had changed again. No longer a spiral. Now, a blooming crescent flower. And on the wind, she heard a whisper not from the bond, not from magic, but from the blood itself. The 9th moon remembers you. And soon. It will return. Chapter 7, Kale's Descent. The palace didn't sleep after the trial. Neither did Kale. He stood alone in the eastern sparring yard, shirtless, blood-streaked, panting, his claws out, his jaw unhinged halfway between man and wolf. Dozens of shattered blades littered the stones. He hadn't called for a sparring partner. He didn't need one. He was fighting himself. The tether was gone. Elira had broken it completely. Not a thread remained. And the absence didn't feel like silence. It felt like something was knocking. Let me out. She's changing. So must you. Don't you remember what we were before her? Kale screamed. The sound was not human. Not wolf. Something between. Something that shouldn't be waking. The next day, Kale avoided the throne room. He avoided Elira. He even avoided Corian, though his every instinct screamed to rip the silver-fanged prince apart. Instead, he wandered the moon halls, hands shaking, visions stabbing into his mind like knives made of memory. He saw Lyanna. Not as she had died. But as she had watched him die. You bound me too late, she said in the vision. You were already breaking. He saw Elira. Not as she was now. But standing in the ruins of the palace, alone, radiant, and no longer looking back. I don't need you, her echo whispered. But the thing inside you does. That night, the shift took him without warning. 1 minute, Kale was walking the moon path outside the palace walls. The next, he was tearing through the woods, full shifted, snarling at shadows that weren't there. His paws bled. His heart raced. His mind was split, torn between the alpha he had been, and the thing he had buried long ago. The creature that had almost killed Lyanna. The creature the moon throne had sealed in chains behind his bones. It was waking. Because the bond hadn't just tethered his heart to Elira. It had kept the monster asleep. She felt it, not through a bond, but through the mark blooming on her palm. Kale's energy wasn't fading. It was twisting. She followed the trail of shattered roots and claw marks deep into the hollow grove. And there he was. Half wolf. Half man. Covered in blood that wasn't his. Eyes glowing with something feral. He turned when she approached, snarling, but stopped. Her presence hit him like a second moon. "Kale," she said softly. "You're not lost." His voice was ragged. Half growl. "You don't understand. You broke the bond. And it was the only thing keeping me in this skin." She stepped closer, fearless. "You are not your wolf." He shook his head, trembling. "I'm not sure I ever was." When she touched his face, his skin burned her. Not with pain, but with a ripple of magic that didn't belong to him anymore. "You're changing," she whispered. He looked at her, and for the first time since the bond had snapped. She saw fear in his eyes. "If I turn into the thing the throne buried, I want you to be the one who stops me." That night, Kale collapsed in the moon chamber, unconscious. His dreams were fire and chains and screaming wolves. And when he woke, his chest was carved with a sigil. He hadn't put it there. It glowed black. And it matched the one on the altar beneath the throne. The mark of the first Alpha. And it was waking too. Chapter 8, The Council Splits. The palace had weathered siege, scandal, and soul-bound trials. But nothing broke it faster than uncertainty. And now, Kale was no longer a mystery. He was a threat. 3 nights after Kale's outburst in the Hollow Grove, the High Council convened beneath the Moonstone Chamber. This time, without Elira. Without Kale. Without the guards loyal to either. They met in a ring of iron flame, a tradition from the old ways, meant to prevent deception, compel honesty, and neutralize magical interference. But even the fire couldn't burn away fear. His wolf is breaking. He's no longer stable. The bond kept him in check. Now there's no check, and no balance. We must name a new alpha before the moon turns. Drenna slammed her staff into the marble. He's marked with the sigil of the first alpha. We cannot allow that kind of power to roam free. Not without control. An older voice whispered what none dared say aloud. If Elira will not leash him, then we must remove him. She entered the chamber mid-debate, uninvited, glowing with spiral light, her voice like steel through smoke. "Try it," she said. "See what happens." The flames dimmed around her. Ralvarin, oldest among them, turned his sightless eyes toward her. "You came uncalled. You spoke treason unchallenged," she countered. Drenna stood. "You cannot protect him and rule us both." Elira stepped closer, her shadow dancing over the runes. "I'm not protecting him. I'm reminding you that fear doesn't crown leaders, will does. If you fear his power, then help me guide it. Don't plot like vipers in a crypt." She turned to the gathered court. "Or declare open rebellion. But know this. If you move against him, you move against me." The room split visibly. Half the elders bowed their heads, whether in submission or strategy, no one could tell. The others stood, silent, eyes flashing, leaving the chamber without a word. They would not challenge her to her face. They would strike somewhere else. Later that night, Elira found Kale in the training hall, alone, meditating, shirt soaked with sweat, knuckles bloodied from bare-fist combat with enchanted stone. He didn't turn as she approached. "You warned them off," he said. "I reminded them who I am," she replied. Kale's breath was shallow. "Elira, it's getting worse. I wake up with visions that don't belong to me. I feel my wolf, but I feel something older now. Bigger." She placed a hand on his back. It was trembling. "Then we don't let it take you." He turned to face her. "I don't think it's trying to take me." I think it's trying to return. Through me. At the edge of the palace walls, Corian waited beneath the eclipse torches. He watched the court split. He watched Kale weaken. And when Merrick approached, he didn't smile. If she wants to survive what's coming, Corian said, she'll have to choose, her heart, or her legacy. Is that a threat? Merrick asked. Corian's voice was velvet smooth. No. It's the prophecy playing out. One queen rises. One alpha falls. But both can't remain. That night, in the chamber where the shattered moonstone had once stood, the shards bled for the first time. Liquid silver pooled around their base. From the darkness, a voice, female, inhuman, spoke softly into the silence. The throne does not forget. And it does not forgive. He wears the mark of the first alpha. And she carries the spark of the last queen. They were never meant to rule side by side. The silver began to boil. Chapter 9, The Red-Blooded Pact. The Moon Palace was no longer her battlefield. Elira needed a different war. One not defined by elders, old rules, or broken stones. If the throne would not let her lead with power unbound, then she would rewrite the map itself. The offer came from a forbidden hand. Slipped into her chamber window wrapped in dried crow feathers, sealed with a ring of bone. The sigil on the scroll was burned rather than inked. Fire a bleeding wolf eye above a broken moon. It was the mark of the red-blooded clans, rogue wolves, outcasts, witches, blood drinkers, and magic-bound oath-breakers cast out of the lunar territories centuries ago. Few even believed they still existed. Fewer lived after trying to find them. Elira read the message twice. Then she packed her blades. I'm going alone, she told Tezsan. They won't speak to anyone else. She rode for 3 days into the forest where compasses failed and the moon turned red in its reflection. The path had no name. The trees bled when touched. Even her wolf grew uneasy beneath her skin. The spiral on her hand pulsed with light the deeper she went, as if her magic was being recognized, or summoned. She reached the red grove on the 4th night. It was not a village. It was a circle of tents, blood altars, bone lanterns, and wolves who didn't blink when they saw her. Only one stepped forward. She didn't bow. She laughed. So the moon's pretty little firebrand decided to burn all the way out here. Her name was Silra Vane. She was old. Sharp-eyed. Cloaked in patchwork runes and dried blood. A hybrid of wolf and witch, with claws dipped in memory magic and a voice that twisted truth into temptation. You're not here for allies, Silra said. You're here for options. Ones you won't find behind that throne. Elira didn't deny it. I want power not granted by bonds. I want loyalty not chained to legacy. And I want wolves who remember who they are without waiting for some stone to name them worthy. Silra grinned. Then you want the red-blooded pact. But nothing we give is free. Elira was led to a clearing surrounded by chanting oathless wolves, half-shifted witches, and flame seers wearing skull-painted masks. They placed 9 bowls before her, each filled with a different substance: blood, ash, bone, salt, silver, snow, ink, wine, and fire. Silra's voice echoed. To form the pact, the queen must taste the 9. If she lives, she leads. If she burns, she was never ours. Kale would have stopped her. Corian would have laughed. Elira did neither. She drank. The world tilted. She fell through herself, through time, possibility, ruin, and triumph. She saw Kale, kneeling before a dark throne, bleeding from the mark on his chest. She saw Corian, leading armies not in her name, but against it. She saw herself, crowned, alone, and wielding a blade that sang the names of the queens she'd buried to rise. And beneath it all, a whisper in the spiral's language. You will break them all. But only if you let yourself be broken first. Elira woke in the ashes. Her lips were stained red. Silra leaned over her, blade pressed to Elira's heart. Last chance. Bow, or burn us all. Elira lifted her spiral-marked hand, and burned her own palm across the blade's edge. Blood sizzled where it met the steel. I'm not here to bow. I'm here to make you unforgettable. Silra smiled. And knelt. Then rise, Bondless Queen. You now speak for the wolves who obey nothing but blood and choice. By dawn, the red-blooded banners were raised. Elira rode at the head of the unbound army, flanked by witches, rogue wolves, spellbound twins, and silver-fanged outcasts with eyes like war. She didn't ride to the palace. She rode to the city walls. And sent a message ahead. Tell the Moon Court this. I no longer lead wolves who kneel. I lead the ones who remember what came before the bond.
Every tale you hear here leaves a mark on the world beyond. If this story stirred something in you, leave a like to weave your magic into ours. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice spins a new thread in the arcane tapestry. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Arcane Stories, where myths breathe, shadows speak, and destinies awaken. The next legend is already waiting for you.